ויענני אדוני הצילה נפשי מצוות שקר מלשון רמייה מה ייתן לך ומה יוסיף לך לשון רמייה חיצי גיבור שריונים עם נחלי וסמים אויה לי כי גרתי משך שכנתי עם הלכת הידר רבת שכנה לי לנפשי עם צוני שלום אני שלום וכי אדבר עמה למלחמה.
I just see where you're gonna be.
Yeah, is this good?
I think I'll figure it out.
Or I can move around.
No, just
Stay still.
yeah. No, just go. Your head's cut off a little bit. I think it's okay.
Not the worst.
Okay.
Okay, so welcome back. Continuing, we're going to start the 10th bracha. We're really moving along, and you'll see some of these brachos we'll do a little quicker than others. They're shorter, and some of them are like 2 lines. So it's not because I don't like them as much as the others, or I feel any less connected to them. But if they're 2 or 3 lines, we'll move a little quicker through them. Sometimes it's quality over quantity, as they say. So first things first, a nice, very short idea about Tefilah in the Parsha. The Parsha has 2 instances of the words lama zeh. Lama, why? Zeh is this. Why is this happening? So we have Rivka, famously in the beginning of the Parsha, lama zeh anochi. She's concerned about her pregnancy. Remember, at this point, according to many Meforshim, she doesn't know she's having twins. First clear indication of twins born in the Parsha, in the Torah. Doesn't mean it's the first set of twins ever born. Medrash says by Adam and Chava that Cain and Hevel each had a twin sister. But on a pshuto shel mikra level, on a simple textual reading, no one's ever had twins before. So that's one reason why many of the Meforshim say she's she's absolutely concerned with something's wrong. She knows that this is not your average pregnancy. That's one opinion. But nonetheless, Lama Zeh Anochi, of course, is referring to her difficult pregnancy. And Esav says, Lama Zeh li b'chora. Right? He says, look, I'm going to die anyways. Why do I need this bechor? So he trades with Yaakov for the lentils. He trades away his birthright. So what was Rivka doing by saying Lama Zeh Anochi? So the Ramban says, interestingly enough, machlokas between the Ramban and others, but the Ramban, Nachmanides, says her crisis was much more existential. That's what the Ramban says. Right? So what does she do? What's her response? She turns to Tefilah. It's our first thing she does. She runs the Shiva Shem Be'ever. She starts davening Hashem. She's talking to God. In fact, this is the Ruach HaKodesh that the Gemara says that Rivka had. She's able to communicate with God, even though she may not be a Nevi'ah. Interesting difference between the two. Right? Sarah was a Nevi'ah, but Rivka had Ruach HaKodesh. Some say that was even a higher level. But either way, she's able to communicate in some way, shape, or form with God. And what does she do? She immediately turns to Tefilah. Why does she say Lama Zeh? Why does Esav say Lama Zeh? Because he says, Hini anochi holech lamos. Hey, I'm going to die anyways. Lama Zeh, why do I need this? Lama Zeh. So perhaps, he decides just to give up. Rivka says, Lama Zeh, I need to daven. So perhaps those are 2 ways of dealing with difficulty and not just tragedy, but crises in general. We have either give up, like Esav, Lama Zeh anochi, either way, Hini anochi holech lamos, or we have like Rivka, that no, that it's time, this is my opportunity to daven. So just a quick idea about Rivka Imenu. We do not learn much more about Rivka Imenu or Yitzchak, for that matter. This is kind of their parsha. And then we move on to Yaakov, and then we have many wives to learn from when it comes to Yaakov. Okay, so we're up to Tekah b'shofar gadol, the 10th bracha. So this begins the section that deals with national needs, geula, redemption, words we've heard. We'll try to understand them together. We ask Hashem to blow not just any shofar. I don't know if you never know. I did not notice this until I started researching this bracha. Interesting enough. Shofar gadol. What's the shofar gadol? What's the shofar gadol? So it's borrowed from the pasuk in Yeshaya. This we said over by the Shabbos HaGadol drasha, Shabbos Shuvah drasha. This part I was familiar with. That the pasuk in Yeshaya says in Perek Chav Zayin, pasuk Yud Gimel, Vayavayom ayu yitaka b'shofar gadol. Okay, so that it should be on that day you'll blow the shofar gadol. That part I was familiar with, talking about, of course, bringing Mashiach. That we're going to blow the shofar. Eliyahu Navi is going to come, tell us that Mashiach's coming. So we're davening right now. The simple understanding of this paragraph is we're davening right now that it should be the time l'cheiru seinu, for our freedom, for our geula. Okay, but why do we call it shofar gadol? Almost seems to imply that the Gemara always makes these observations. It says, well, if the Torah says, if Tanakh says something is gadol, that implies something else is katan. Right? That's so crazy. You don't say my older child if you don't have another child, right? Well, someone wouldn't say, oh, my older daughter. Okay, so what about younger? I don't have another daughter. Well, what do you mean? Why do you say your older daughter?
My first wife.
Very good. Okay, first wife. Very good. First World War. That's what they always say, right? That they didn't call it World War One during World War One. The Great War. Very good. Right. The war to end all wars, or the Great War? The Great War for short. But they didn't call it World War One, obviously, because that would be a pretty depressing thought if you think about it. But nonetheless, Rabbi Chanuch, a teller, always used to say that as a joke. He used to always say that wouldn't it have been incredibly depressing to call it World War One during? You never think about it that way, but he's right. You don't call World War One World War One while you're in World War One. Right? Okay, just something to think about. So it's the same concept. If there's a shofar gadol, there has to be a shofar katan out there. So the Medrash Yalkut Shmoni and Vayera, interestingly enough, says that we're talking about which shofar? The specific one. We're talking about the ram that was offered instead of Yitzchak. By Kedas Yitzchak, we know that there was supposed to be Yitzchak, but Hashem had a ram prepared even from the beginning of time. And that ram's horn is what we're referring to when we say the shofar gadol. So, interestingly enough, this part I was not familiar with. A ram has two horns, the Medrash says. The right horn is bigger and more powerful than the left horn. Karnol shel yamin, shel gadol mismolo. The right horn is much bigger, much stronger, much more powerful.
Does this include the chatzotros?
Very good. So chatzotzros are the trumpets. The trumpets come from a different animal. It's one Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah discusses the difference between the chatzotzros are the trumpets. They used to play them on all fast days. In the time of the Beis Hamikdash, they would play them on other times as well. And even during Rosh Hashanah, that was like the secondary musical instrument. But the shofar was the main attraction, as opposed to on fast days, where it was the other way around. So chatzotzros, if I remember correctly, the shofar for Rosh Hashanah had to come from a Yael, a female animal, and from the chatzotzros was from a male animal. So similar, the cousins or whatever, the brothers and sisters, if you will. Same, similar sound. Although I knew someone who played trumpet for the Israeli army 25 years ago. And I once said that the trumpet sounds like the shofar, and he laughed. It's like, that's like telling my in-laws who are very into wine that Bar Tanura is as good as, whatever bottle they're bringing. Well, they know enough when they come to me. They bring Bar Tanura. They don't have to, the first Shabbos, they used to bring like a fancy bottle, and they realize, although now my mother just brings for herself. But it's true that, you have this idea here as well. So the left horn, interesting enough, was the shofar that Hashem blew on Har Sinai. Interestingly enough. When the Torah was given, we know the shofar was sounded. Hashem blew the shofar. Which one was that? That was the left horn, which implies that's the smaller one, not the way I would have thought, but that makes sense, because now we're asking Hashem, Tekah b'shofar gadol, to blow the big shofar. You already blew the smaller one, which was great, don't get me wrong. That was a wonderful event at Har Sinai. The right horn, the Medrash says, Shu asid litkoa b'al asid lavo. That's the horn that Hashem is reserving to blow to tell us that Mashiach is here. Okay, there will be a complete geula, which is a big theme of this bracha of Tekah b'shofar gadol. The whole point is blowing the shofar so that we have the geula. Therefore, in this bracha, we're not asking for the revelation that we had on Har Sinai, the left horn. That's not what this bracha is about at all. But we're asking for the final revelation. So in terms of understanding that, now we know which shofar corresponds to which. When we talk about the idea of Har Sinai, so Shavuos, we're talking about the left horn, the smaller shofar. But now what we want and what we're praying for and davening for is the right horn, the big horn, the shofar hagadol, or the shofar gadol that Yeshaya is talking about in Perek Zayin. Okay, that's the 10th bracha. Now we've gathered the exiles. That's what Tekah b'shofar gadol, right? Kampos ba'artzenu. We've gathered everyone together. Now what do we need? Well, we need to appoint leadership. So look at the 11th bracha. Hashiva shoftenu. We gather the exiles. Okay, following bracha logically deals with the next step. establishing judges who can bring the returning Jews back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? We need leadership. We need people who can establish leadership. If we're all together and we're combining, different groups of people that, we never thought we would ever see each other and see eye to eye on, but we figured out a way in Tekab Shofar to get together and get along. Sort of reminds me a little bit of the rally we were speaking about on Shabbos, where it's kind of, thank you. Everyone is saying that, just think 7 weeks ago how much, I would say we hated each other, but how much, how many issues we had. Those issues were gone, unfortunately for the wrong reason. I'd rather not be gone. But those issues were, I wouldn't say eradicated, but for the most part, at least put on the back burner immediately. And we've put aside all of our differences, at least temporarily, to understand and appreciate what we need. And that, of course, is achdus, as we've been saying. So if we gather everyone together with Tekab Shofar Gadol, so now we need leadership. We need leadership to make sure, everyone can get along, everyone can appreciate each other. So that's what Hashiva Shoftinu is. It establishes judges who can bring and lead the returning Jews back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So,
why not a king?
So we'll get to a king. And I assume that we need the Shoftim and then we need the king. Similar to, we do mention a king, by the way. Excellent question. What's the bracha? No, at the end of that bracha, Shiur Shoftinu, what's the bracha? So we do need a king. It's true. What type of king are we talking about in that bracha is a different story, because that's really referring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The whole idea of appointing a king may not be ideal either. It may have only been as a result of us complaining. So it's not exactly clear if a king is a good idea. Do we even need a king? Was it only because the Medrash says it's possible that we only asked for a king because the non-Jews had one? My son was upset that my daughter came home with earrings last night from the boutique that my mother-in-law bought for her. She didn't buy me anything. There were earrings. It wasn't. He did get a toy, but it wasn't as chashiv as earrings. Really nice earrings. So from his perspective, did he want earrings? 6-year-old boy. Does he want earrings? He's not going to wear earrings.
My son
hopefully not.
wanted earrings for a very long time.
He wanted earrings. Yeah, she did buy him an Israeli necklace when she was in Israel, a chai necklace. Yes, I don't know if he's going to be wearing that at Tefilah Moshe anytime soon. But I thought it was very cute that, I think he saw everyone getting necklaces, so he wanted a necklace. I think I said he could hang it up. It's cute to have in his, in his drawer or whatever. But nonetheless, so why does he want earrings, right? So he wants earrings because, not because he's going to wear them, because he sees his sisters having earrings. They're being bought something by their grandmother, so he wants something as well. So it's the same idea here as well, that the Medrash tells us that we wanted a king. We don't want a king for the right reasons, according to one opinion of the Medrash. We wanted a king because the non-Jews had kings, and it was cool. That we don't need a king. If we have the just society, if we have everything working and everyone's being osek b'yeshuva sha'olam, who is doing good things for the world at large and being successful citizens, we don't need a king. We need leadership, but we don't necessarily need it in the form of a king. So it's interesting how that dynamic plays out. But in this bracha, anyways, right now, if we have shoftim, if we have leadership, that will be more than enough. Or you could say we don't need a king because melech leiv tzedakah mishpat. We have a king. Although there's another idea that maybe sometimes we understand the kingdom of melech basar adam, of mortal kingdom, so that we appreciate HaKadosh Baruch Hu's kingship, at least by Aser Semei Tshuva. Just a few possibilities to address your issue. But good question. Okay. So we need to establish judges, leadership, leaders who can help us as we're bringing everyone back. That's what Hashiva Shoftinu. We say v'tzadkinu b'mishpat, judge us righteously. So what are we referring to? What type of judgment? It's either God's daily judgment, which is important. It's not just Aser Semei Tshuva where we get judged. That's not the only time we're getting judged. In fact, the Mishnah elsewhere says, Mishnah Rosh Hashanah says, every Yom Tov is a different type of judgment. Judge for the produce, for the rain, Shavuos, fruits, things like that. Trees, for Tu B'Shvat. We follow Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai would say Rosh Chodesh Shvat. So we have judgments throughout the year. This isn't just, Rosh Hashanah's time to be serious. It just ends up working out that way. But Adam Nidon B'chol Yom, the Gemara says. Rabbi Yossi tells us that we're judged every single day. There's some sort of din going on every day.
When you say tzedek,
Tirdo?
Tirdo.
Sure.
So was this tzedek?
Yeah, this is what we're talking about. That's what we're referring to, the righteousness and the judgment of that.
Right.
Yeah, so it's, I knew a judge in Baltimore County. He had that as his license plate, secular judge, but I always thought that was cool. He had that as his license plate. But nonetheless, Adam Nida M'chol Yom. So it either refers to the judgment that we get on this world, it's one opinion, the daily judgment apparently, or it refers to the judgment of us after we leave the world. Interesting dynamic. Two very different ways of looking at the paragraph, right? Because if it's referring to the paragraph in the here and now, right, the Tzadkinim HaMishpat, we're telling Hashem, hey, we need to be judged every day, make it a favorable one, because that's why we're davening every day. Okay, or if this is nothing to do with this world, this is more a judgment on the next world. So, interesting way.
Why don't we say tzedakah on service
We're going to get to that. Very good. Excellent. Very, very good. So, couldn't have added better myself. During the Aseret Tshuva, what do? We want to emphasize the importance is, it's not that the tzedakah is not important or the melech ohev tzedakah. The most important thing, we just need to focus on the goal, according to many, of Aseret Tshuva, at the very least Rosh Hashanah, is to crown Hashem as our king, to make Hashem our king. So it's not that we're ignoring other things, Susan, it's just that, hey, this is what I want our focus, our whole lens to be focused on. So we emphasize Hashem as our king. We also need him as our judge, interestingly enough. So that's why we can't possibly ignore the fact he's still our judge. He's both. So our judge, what happens though? We need our judgment to be favorable. So we say, HaMelech HaMishpat. We get rid of Melech, Ohev, Tzedakah. Right? We don't need that. It doesn't necessarily mean that we don't love him or he's not loved and he's not Tzedakah, charitable. That's not what it is. It's just we just need to really zone in on the fact that he's our king and our judge at this time. So it's not that it's only two words that we're taking out here. But that's what we say. So we say Melech HaMishpat instead of the usual Melech Ohev Tzedakah Mishpat.
You can also say, even though Hashem has to put negative decrees into the following year, doesn't mean Hashem loves to do it.
Right? That's interesting. So Melech Ohev Tzedakah Mishpat would say, right, you get rid of the word Ohev.
Well, if you just
it's like a parent.
Right.
You gotta be strict. You don't love doing that. You don't like. I always tell my students, I hate. You think like, sometimes the teachers are out to get me. Like they're looking to find, what I did wrong, what I did. You're almost like you're spying on me. You're finding what I did. Oh, I got you. I caught you. No, that's not what teachers do. Most teachers, anyways. That's not what teachers do. No, they don't want to get the student in trouble. There's paperwork involved. No, that's what I tell my students. They don't always appreciate that. It's true. Like if I take away a Chromebook, now I gotta go upstairs. I gotta be responsible for it. I take away a cell phone. I don't want to do that. I'd rather just can you just put it away and stop using it? Can you use it for the right reasons or whatever it is? So it's true. I think that it's same with parenting, same with teaching, where you want to be the loving. And sometimes you have to be strict. Sometimes you have to lay down the law, I guess. Okay, very important halacha, by the way, about Melech Ohev Tzedakah Mishpat. I know it's not Seres Tshuva. Maybe we'll have to review beforehand. But very important halacha. We know by HaMelech HaKadosh, which we spoke about, that we repeat Shemona Esrei if you forget. If you finish the bracha, you moved on to the next bracha. It's been a few seconds. That you have to repeat Shemona Esrei. Melech Ohev Tzedakah Mishpat, interestingly enough, halacha is, the Shulchan Aruch says, this is why it's fascinating, it doesn't happen often. The Shulchan Aruch in Kuf Yud Ches says you have to repeat Shemona Esrei. So, according to the Shulchan Aruch, and there's no Ramah. Remember, the Ramah is the Ashkenazic posek of the last 500 years. Usually he argues the Shulchan Aruch. So one would assume that Ashkenazim have to repeat Shemona Esrei. Except the Ramah, much later in Shulchan Aruch, much later, about a couple hundred, the Shulchan Aruch's at the end. I got it the other way around. Shulchan Aruch's at the end. The Ramah's at the beginning. He says, you don't repeat Shemona Esrei. Why? Why don't we need to repeat? Because let's say you said Melech Ohev Tzedakah Mishpat. Well, what did you just mention?
You mentioned.
You got both anyways. It's okay. So we Ashkenazim hold, you don't repeat.
What about Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi and
Which, that's the amount of time that you have to, it's about 2 to 3 seconds. Or Tok to the Dibor. 2 to 3 seconds. That would be, if you remembered it in that time, then you would go back. Melech HaKadosh is a little different. Because Melech HaKadosh is once you finish, although you do have Tok to the Dibor for that as well. You may have more time for Melech Ohev Tzedakah Mishpat. You may be able to do, because remember those 13 middle brachos are really like are all like the same in the same category, as opposed to Melech HaKadosh is the end of the first three, most important. So Melech HaKadosh might be a little different, but you do have, in theory, on a halakhic level, you do have the amount of time it takes to say Shalom Aleichem, Rebbe Umari. 2 seconds, 3 seconds, depending on how fast you talk. But excellent. Okay, so that would be Melech HaMishpat or Melech HaMishpat for Aser Simei Tshuva. That would be Hashiva Shoftim. Okay, let's start Lam Al-Shinim. I don't think we'll get through the entirety of it, but really fascinating bracha of Lam Al-Shinim. We'll see why. A couple of reasons. I said that a lot. Doesn't mean that all of them aren't fascinating. They're all 19 fascinating brachos. But this one's really interesting. First things first, let's start on the practical level. This is one of only 2 brachos that starts with the letter Vav. So they say, who cares? So this one starts with a Zayin, this one starts with a Chet, this one, who cares that it's a Vav? No, Vav is an interesting letter. Vav is the Vav HaChibor. Let's think about what it means in English. It's and. What do you mean and? It's continuation. It's got to be a continuation, but what are we continuing from? Previous bracha, but why don't they all have Vav then? That's, the question asked by many about Lam Al-Shinim. So it's interesting. The commentators say this one has to be connected. The others, is a nice idea. We're trying to connect it, trying to make it, connected. But this one has to be connected to the previous bracha. So what's the connection? So after bringing everyone back to Eretz Yisrael with Tekah b'Shofar Gadol, that was the first bracha we said. We then established a just and a fair community with Hashiva Shoftim, the second bracha we did. So now, what do we need? Well, now the judges need to eliminate the evildoers. Lam Al-Shinim. Lam Al-Shinim gets rid of, the riffraff. I don't know. Whatever word you want to use. We need to eliminate the evildoers. We'll see. We're not talking about, murderers, and we're talking about interesting types of sinners in this bracha. We say the Chol Harisha Karega Toved, that all the evil directed at your nation should quickly be eradicated. Get rid of all the evil. We'll have to get to why we say the Chol Harisha, all the evil, and not, what could we have said? Very good, Rishayim, evildoers. It's going to be, we'll probably do that next week. I don't think we'll have time today. But one of the most fascinating disagreements in all of Shas. Why is it fascinating for a women's shiur? Because it's a man versus a woman. And we paskin like the woman, interestingly enough. We follow the opinion of, I don't want to spoil it. But it's one of the most fascinating disagreements in all of Shas, in all of Gemara. So, the Lam Al-Shinim, of course, that's the bracha against the minim. Minim. My students, whenever I talk about the minim, they say minis. That's the way they remember. Minis. No, minim. Mem, yud, nun, yud, mem. Sofit. So, minim, Jewish heretics, for lack of better terminology. We're talking about Jews. Could be tzdukim. So tzdukim, the tzadusais, and we have the kutim. So either way, there is somewhat of a common denominator. Some were Jewish, some weren't. It still causes problems. The common denominator was a lot of them believed in the written Torah, did not believe in the oral Torah, which may not sound like a big deal to us, except that it's our fundamental belief in Judaism, that we believe in the Torah Sheba'al Peh. And if thinking now, like all of Shabbos, the Torah Shebachtav, for example, tells us keep Shabbos. Well, how do we keep Shabbos? How do you know what to keep Shabbos, what to do? How do you know any halacha? It's almost all Torah Sheba'al Peh. So for those who say, well, isn't the Torah Shebachtav, isn't that Torah the most important one? Torah Sheba'al Peh, rabbis are fighting with each other, and that's not what Torah Sheba'al Peh is. Torah Sheba'al Peh is every halacha you keep. Don't light a match on Shabbos. That is Torah Shebachtav. Anything else that you do to keep Shabbos for the last 30, 40, 50, I'm going to stop, years, is Torah Sheba'al Peh. Right? So that's the significant difference. It's our fundamental belief, and it's what separated us over the last couple thousand years at least from Tzedukim were a little before that, Kusim. Either way, we're talking about heretics who had no issue with wearing a four-corner garment and putting strings on it, but wouldn't keep any of the halachot, and in fact went out of their way to mess with us about it.
So a lot of groups here.
Sorry?
They include a lot.
Yeah, we can throughout our history.
Christians, the early Christians.
Correct. So the minim, interestingly, Lam Al-Shinim, we're probably referring, although we'll get to the Christians would send their spies, interestingly enough. So it could be all of the above. It could have been at various points in Jewish history, it's whoever was messing with us more, right? Because that's something we learn, speaking to people at the rally. That's something we learn about Jewish history. people just, they come in all shapes and sizes, but they don't leave Jews alone in exile, right? That's the story of our gullahs. Sometimes they're murdering us, sometimes they're killing us, sometimes they're trying to eradicate us, sometimes they just don't like us, sometimes they're jealous of our growth in the financial and professional world, and sometimes it manifests in just verbal anti-Semitism, which is not good either. I'm not belittling that at all. In many ways, it could be worse. But our history is about people who we didn't do anything for the most part. Sometimes we're our own worst issue, we're our own worst problems, and we have to deal with that. But it's just people who, they bothered us for no reason. We were always just sitting there quietly, and for the most part, there were exceptions to that statement, but for the most part, we're sitting there quietly, and then people just, pogroms and Holocausts and everything like that. It's anti-Semitism in a nutshell. It's Jewish history in a nutshell, ultimately. Okay, so that's what we do here. We get rid of the minim. So the Cholevecha may replace it. Sorry?
The informers later on in Jewish history.
Very good. Yes, we're going to talk about that. Yeah, that's part of V'la Malshinim. That's part of why 2,000-ish years ago they made V'la Malshinim, because V'la Malshinim is going to be the added one. Okay, so the bracha of V'la Malshinim, the Gemara in Brachos says that the bracha against these minim, Jewish heretics, min, mem, yud, nun, we have that by Sukkos, where we have minim. Minim, right? So what do minim mean? Kinds. Not you are kind, like gentle and kind.
Types.
Kind, yeah, types. So the word means kind, like the four minim. So minim are different types, different kinds of Jews. And in some cases, maybe people, as the Christians would try, they pretended to be Jews. So either way, it's interesting. So this bracha was the last one established. This is talking about in Yavne, for those who have been to Yavne, by Shmuel HaKatan. It's probably called Katan not because he was 5'4", but he was probably called Katan out of
Left one.
Yeah, I have a feeling he was just humble. But it was really under the direction of Rabbi Gamliel. And the Gemara asks, Hani Timi, sorry, I don't understand. Count them up. We don't have Shmona Esrei Brachos. We don't have 18 Brachos. We have, Tishas we have 19. Amar Rab Levi Brachas Aminim B'Yavne Tiknu. You're right. The 19th was this one. It was added by the rabbis, by the sages in Yavne. Okay. The last, we'll do one more line. So the Christians, this was the Romans, they wanted to ensure we weren't planning on building the Beis HaMikdash. So what did they do? So they would send spies to the shul. This is what I think you're talking about. So they added this bracha to expose the members of the Christian sect. If someone skipped the bracha, or let's say, we saw, why are you skipping that bracha? What's going on there? Or we said the bracha and they didn't answer amen. That also shows the power of amen, right? But nonetheless, so we said, that exposed them. That was at least led us to investigate them to see if they were really a spy. Doesn't mean that someone was daydreaming and missed an amen that automatically their head was cut off. That's not what it was. But at least it kind of opened the door for an investigation. This person's sitting there in the back of shul and he's not answering amen to the bracha of V'la Malshinim, but he answered amen to every other bracha. Something might be going on. Might be. So that's how they did that. That's part of V'la Malshinim. We'll get to the censoring of this bracha because this was they felt a little insulted by this bracha. We'll get to that a little bit next week. Mitzvah Hashem. I think we're on. Yeah, it's a holiday weekend, but wherever I'm going, I should be back by then.
Wherever you're going, you weren't